When I was in Rome, I had a great conversation with Brother Stephen. Brother Stephen is part of the Home of the Mother community, a community focused on evangelization and youth. The conversation was wide ranging. We talked about everything from his time in Rome to the fact that he knows how to juggle, which brings him into a totally different relationship with these young people. And I think you'll really enjoy the conversation as I did, so let's get into it. Well, thanks again for taking the time here. Can you start us off by telling us a little bit about your vocation story?
Yeah, sure. So anyway, my name is Brother Stephen. I'm from the state of Maryland, United States. Um, I uh, I grew up in a Catholic family. I always grew up Catholic. I had like a simple faith. But there was a point where I was in my adolescence, and a lot of times that could be the time where you start asking yourself like the big questions. And
Yeah.
I remember there was a point in my adolescence where I had these like deep existential questions that really started to bother me. Like, what's the meaning of my life? Does God really exist? Like, do I really have a purpose? Like, what's my vocation? And I was never like an atheist, but there was a moment where I just really wanted to know like the deeper, the answers to the deepest questions of life.
Yeah.
So I was on YouTube and I came across like these videos of atheists saying like why God doesn't exist and why all of this is like doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I realized that I didn't have that much formation, and I had to make a decision. I was either gonna start forming myself in the Catholic faith, or I was gonna like give in to these arguments.
Yeah.
So it started this whole journey of like seeking and asking questions, even praying more intentionally. And there came a moment where I started to have like this deep conviction in the existence of God that I didn't have beforehand. And when that moment happened, I was like, wow, like if this is all true and if God really exists, then the greatest thing I can do with my life is to give my life totally over to Him. So that was the way the Lord was calling me. So that's when in high school, like, the Lord was starting to sow the seeds of the vocation and the desire to become a priest.
Wow.
And I kept it to myself for many years. I went to university. I went to college at Loyola University of Maryland, and I was studying business. I had an internship at Textron, where it's a company that helps manufacture technology for the American military.
Wow.
But there was something inside of me that was like screaming inside of me. That was just saying like, you don't belong here. This is not for you. Like there was something that was just, yeah, I still had this deep desire in my heart to be a priest, but I didn't know with who or with where.
Yeah.
And there came a moment in my junior year of college. I did a study abroad experience in Spain for a month, for about I think it was about 2 months. And that's where I came into contact with the community that I'm part of now, Home of the Mother.
Okay.
So Home of the Mother, it's a new religious community that we received pontifical approval in 2010 as a public association of the faithful.
Oh, wow.
And it was founded by a priest who's still alive. His name is Father Rafael Alonso.
Okay.
And it's sisters and brothers and priests that live the consecrated life. And we have 3 missions in the church. We have the defense of the Eucharist, defense of the honor of Our Lady, especially the privilege of her virginity, and the conquest of the youth for Jesus Christ.
Wow.
So we do a lot of work with like young people, with families. And when I came into contact with them in Spain, I was really like impressed by the authenticity, by the seriousness of which the people, like I saw the brothers and sisters living the vocation,
Yeah.
and also by the spiritual depth that I saw in the priests.
Wow.
Because the superior general, Father Felix, he invited me to attend what was called a weekend of spiritual exercises, according to the method of St. Ignatius of Loyola.
Yeah, yeah.
Which you spend a couple of days, like just immersing yourself in the gospel, different meditations, thinking about the last things. And in that moment, I started to come in contact with the spirituality of this community, and I was totally blown away.
Wow.
You know, I just saw like something like real and deep, and something that I had always been looking for. And so I thought, so that was my first contact. And after that experience in Spain, I continued in contact with them.
Wow.
And for me personally, like I felt really drawn to this community. I was impressed by the Home of the Mother. But for me personally, it took a huge psychological and spiritual leap just to begin to consider this as a possibility.
Yeah.
This is like in Spain, you know? Yeah. I'm from America. I'm like,
Go to another country.
yeah. I mean, I'm from Maryland, United States. I always thought, okay, God's coming to be a priest, I'm sure, but it's probably going to be in the United States. It's going to be maybe with the religious community here.
Yeah.
I never thought that God was going to like, but anyway, it was like a continuous drawing and a tugging at my heart that never went away. Like I was around different diocesan priests, I was around different religious communities, and it was something that was constant for 2 years, like this constant draw. And And my parents are really confused. They're like, why do you want to go to Spain? Like, what's over there that's not over here?
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, this was like a mystery to myself. It wasn't something I could just logically explain, but it was something that was coming outside of me, and something God was being very persistent with me, because it was a continuous draw in my heart for 2 years. And I couldn't get this experience out of my heart and my mind what I had in Spain with the Home of the Mother.
Yeah.
So after I graduated college, I decided I needed to take more time to discern. And long story short, I took the leap. It was a big leap.
I can imagine.
It wasn't an easy decision. But one of the things that gave me strength was to know that, like, if this desire had been so consistent for so long, and this had to be coming from God. This couldn't just be like my own idea, because it was. And so then I made the decision to join the Home of the Mother as a candidate. And I've been part of the community ever since.
Wow.
And I can honestly say that it's been the happiest years of my life. And I'm not just saying that like superficially. There's like very concrete reasons for that. And one of the reasons was because in the measure that I started to surrender my life to God was the measure I actually started to discover what true joy is.
Wow.
Because before I joined the community, like I was Catholic, but I would usually evaluate the value of my life based on how much I was enjoying myself. So my criteria was like, okay, am I enjoying myself? Like, do I feel good? Am I getting the most out of every weekend? But like when I started joining the community, I started to understand that I had to change my mentality, and I started to discover that my true joy comes from making an act of love, making my life an act of love for Jesus Christ. And it's something I'm continuing to discover. It's something that I think also like it takes a lifetime to discover.
Yeah.
But it's something that I discovered that's where true peace and joy comes from.
Yeah.
And like sometimes people can hear that and think, oh, that's like sounds like simple, like.
Yeah.
But like just because it's simple doesn't make it any less true.
Yeah.
And I've been part of the community for 9 years. I've made my perpetual vows last
okay.
year in
Okay.
September. So praise God.
Praise God.
And now I'm studying here at the Santa Croce.
Awesome.
It's been a huge blessing. This is my second year of philosophy. So we've had a lot of priests and in our community have also passed through here.
Yeah.
Our Superior Father Felix, he studied here. He also got his doctorate here as well.
Okay.
Other priests in our community as well have also formed here. And we have a very good relationship with the Santa Croce, and very good, we're just very grateful for the formation here.
That's amazing.
And it's a huge relief I'm truly saying this, it's a huge relief to like come here and study and to be able to trust in your professors. Because a lot of times you can get into like, wait, is that really like orthodox? Is that really according to the church teaching?
Yeah.
But like having that trust in your professors, that just takes a huge weight off of, as far as like the student goes. Because, we want to be formed like in the faith, but like formed according to the magisterium, according to the catechism.
Yeah.
And in Santa Croce, people are like, they're definitely centered here.
Yeah.
So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Tell me a little bit about your prior to coming to Santa Croce. You had several years' experience as an international missionary and service to youth. What of those past experiences inspire you now when you study and seem particularly challenging?
Yeah. In our community, a lot of times our community, like the brothers here, like we mix like missions with studies. So just because you feel called to be a priest doesn't mean you're going to be studying like immediately the whole course.
Yes.
So before coming to Santa Croce, I spent 4 years as a missionary.
Okay.
So I was 3 years in Ireland and also a year in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, wow.
And during that time, like attending to our community, attending to our lay movement, but also working a lot with the youth, because that's part of our charism. So in Ireland, my role was to go into the high schools, in Ireland they call them secondary schools, to go into the classrooms and to evangelize the youth. And the same thing also in Jacksonville, Florida. But anyway, those are two very different like worlds.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
The south of Ireland. Because like in Ireland, what we've seen, and anyway, Ireland is traditionally known as like a very Catholic country, and it has like very Catholic roots.
Yes.
But there's been a massive kind of like movement of people that have drifted away from the Catholic Church. And a lot of times what we've seen in the young people is that they're 3 generations removed from the Catholic faith. So a lot of times you're starting off with very little. Like sometimes they don't even know exactly who God is. Like you can't even count on that.
Wow.
Like you can't. So, and a lot of times like with the scandals that have happened, the older kids, like you can walk in there and sometimes the older kids will automatically associate you with like a creepy person. or with a pedophile. Like there's been moments where I was with older groups of guys in a classroom, and just for seeing me in a sutan, I had to establish right away that I wasn't a pedophile.
Wow.
Because that's what was in their mind.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said that, there was one guy that was just like shaking his head and saying, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, you know? Because it was something that really marked, it's something that's marked the country.
Yeah.
More like the older generation. But the younger generation, they're more, I wouldn't say they don't have that as much as mine.
Yeah.
They're more of with like a totally blank slate.
Yes.
So you're working with, and so, you know, our strategy, like our method when we went into the schools was like we would share a testimony, and then we'd also do juggling because they're kids.
Oh, yeah.
I lived with a priest who was a professional juggler.
Wow.
Yes, and he started to teach me some of the stuff, and I just realized that was like a lot of times that was like our key. Not only like getting to the kids, but also winning over the professors, because just because a lot of these schools, they're kind of like Catholic in name, and just because the bishop wanted us to enter into the school doesn't mean that like we were just, you know, we could just walk in there and do and say whatever we wanted to.
Yeah.
It was something that was extraordinarily useful, but also like our testimony, because like we didn't evaluate our success based on like if there was like huge reaction or if the kids were enjoying themselves. Like our criteria is like, are we planting seeds for the faith? You know, that was like our mission. Like, it would be a failure if they just came out like just being entertained. You know, our mission was to like present a new image of the faith, a new image of the priesthood, and let that be like the seed in their heart for that to grow. You know, because a lot of times you're just working in faith, because a lot of times with these kids you wouldn't have like continuity. We weren't like chaplains in the schools. These were like we were in charge of like all the high schools, pretty much, of the diocese. So we'd be going into the high schools and trying to plant seeds, and then trusting in the Lord for Him to do the work. You know?
Yeah, because you'll never see the fruit, maybe. But.
Yeah, like sometimes you would see like signs, and like sometimes we'd have like little retreats where we take the guys out and do like pilgrimages, and but yeah, and it was just and also in Ireland as well. There's like we also was ministering to the remnant of families that really wanted like to live the faith.
Yes.
And so that was, you know, important to us to like bring those families together. And so like all my experiences in the mission field and in Florida, it really created in me like a deep desire to be formed well. Because you start like once you're being a missionary, you start to understand and you see the importance of like how important formation is.
Yeah.
Because you're forming them, you're forming people. So like when I came to the Santa Croce, like I was so excited, and I continue to be excited for the formation I'm receiving here, because after like time in the missions, you see like that this is important, because you're forming other people, you're forming the church.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, like how your formation that you're receiving now, how will that help you when you go back out into the mission field?
Yeah, so for right now, I'm studying philosophy in my second year of philosophy, so there would still remain 3 years of theology.
Yeah.
And so for right now, with philosophy, we're studying, we're studying like metaphysics, natural theology, kind of like understanding the groundwork, the Aristotelian groundwork for the faith, understanding like the relationship between faith and reason and how it's complementary and not contradictory. I think all those things are important, because like in the secular society that we're living in today, I think and what I saw as well as an adolescent, like there's like a huge gap in understanding of like how the faith is something reasonable. And I think that's really important to communicate that the faith is reasonable. And in Christianity, it's not a philosophy, it's a revelation. It's something but the Christian faith, like what the Christian tradition has done is that we've also learned to appreciate and to instrumentalize like Greek classical philosophy in order to express the revelation. So that's an example of faith and reason go together. You know, they're not like, and for that reason you have words like transubstantiation. You know, like what's substance? Like, Aristotle, what did Aristotle say about substance? How did St. Thomas Aquinas, how did he like back that up? You know, how did he complement that? So it's something that I've been kind of like having my ears open, and in my mind it's like, okay, like everything I'm receiving now, how can I transmit this to high school kids? Because that's what's waiting for me. So I've been really appreciative for that, you know.
Welcome to the rooftop of the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome. I invite you to join me this October 12th through the 16th on pilgrimage. We'll visit St. Peter's Basilica, walk in the footsteps of St. Francis in Assisi, and learn from world-class professors here at the university. Go to puhcf.org/Rome to sign up. Spots are filling up very fast, so please go there today. Ciao. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know that you stepped out in faith. You moved from the U.S. to Spain, then Ireland, then back to the U.S. But what about Rome? What sort of struck you, or what was in your heart when you found out that you were coming to Rome to study? I mean, at the base of
it's
Vatican
incredible.
Hill here.
That was very exciting to be at the center of Rome. I mean, in our community, we're only like 15 minutes away from Santa Croce, so we're constantly living in the center, and it's been a huge blessing to be in the heart of the church, like just like walking down the street, relics of saints like Saint Philip Neri, Saint Monica, she's down the street here, Saint Agnes is also like right over there. Yeah. Just all of these saints, and for me, it was a huge blessing to be present when Pope Leo was elected at the conclave.
Yeah.
So we were waiting there, and it was unbelievable because like when the Cardinals were voting, everyone was like in suspension, because as soon as the white smoke came out, like everyone was just gonna start running over there. So, but thanks be to God, we were there before the white smoke came out.
Wow.
And myself and my community, we were able to be present when he was elected.
Wow.
And that was unbelievable. That was a totally unforgettable experience.
Wow.
An experience I'll never forget for the rest of my life. Because as soon as the white smoke came out, the whole environment was just electrified.
Wow.
And some people were jumping over the barriers,
Wow.
And I was helping them. Like, yeah, get in here. Like, you don't want to miss this. Look what you're doing. And it was unbelievable. And when the Pope came out, and I think his presence just communicates peace. And that was his message as well, because he was elected around this time last year as well, during
Easter
Easter
almost
time.
a year. Yeah.
He's like, peace. Like, I want to communicate the message of the resurrection of Christ, which is peace. And I think that's so important for the world to hear that and to see that, that Christ has come to bring peace, and that peace has come at a price.
Yeah.
But it was a price that he was paid for love of us.
Yeah.
So, anyway, just, drones everywhere, journalists everywhere, helicopters everywhere. And also helped me to understand, because afterwards the Pope celebrated a mass, and it was his first mass with all the heads of state.
Yeah.
And I started seeing heads of state from literally all over the world, like the vice president, presidents and representatives from different nations. And I didn't have this fully present, but the Pope really has a huge role to play in the international scene, you know? Like the Catholic.
Absolutely.
So living all of that's been a huge blessing.
That's so cool. Returning back to a little bit about the Home of the Mother community that you're part of. Is it an Ignatian spirituality? You spoke a little bit about the exercise of St. Ignatius being something that you practiced on that retreat.
Yeah. It's kind of like our founder. We have a Carmelite spirituality.
Okay.
So we have. I mean, we're not like a contemplative cloistered monastic community. We're a missionary community, but we also are keen on fostering a contemplative spirit. In our formation, our novitiate, a lot of times we'll be studying spiritual theology. So the spiritual theology of Saint Teresa of Avila, Saint John of the Cross, kind of like the science behind the union with God. That's very important for our spirituality, and something our formators will insist on. And also, but it's also, our founder has also seen the importance for the spiritual exercises as well. So it's something we try to provide for young people and also for lay people.
Okay.
So, and because in the spiritual exercises, that's very important, because that's when you can come to a deeper knowledge of yourself and also a deeper knowledge of God.
Yeah.
And it's something that we also live every year. So every year our community will participate in the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And we found that as a very effective tool for evangelization and conversion, because there's nothing like putting someone in silence before the Blessed Sacrament in the presence of Christ with meditating on the gospel to really transform the person. So, but yeah, we have a Carmelite. It's kind of like a mix of things, like a Home of the Mother, where we have our own charism, working with the young people. And I think for me, the greatest, one of the things that made me most excited about joining the community was that I saw very clearly the Home of the Mother as a work of God. And I saw that in a lot of different ways. Like a lot of times, for example, it's producing, I think above all, the number one proof of that is that it's producing fruits of sanctity. I don't know if you're familiar with Sister Claire Crockett. She's actually a servant of God. Her process of canonization has been opened.
Wow, okay.
But a lot of people would be familiar with the Home of the Mother through her.
Oh,
because
gotcha.
there was a nun. She was a nun in our community that died in 2016 in Ecuador, and she was anyway, in our community, our sisters produced a documentary on YouTube that's called All or Nothing.
Okay.
And that documentary just exploded on the internet.
Wow.
It exploded and it started reaching all these different countries. It actually started having a big effect on seminaries as well in the United States.
Wow.
Because seminarians and religious were watching this documentary and people are coming away like renewed in their vocation or profoundly impacted or with having this renewed desire in their heart for sanctity. And so she's like a proof of that, and she's a servant of God now.
Wow.
And she's, God willing, maybe hopefully one day will become a saint.
Wow.
And then also a priest in our community as well that died recently, Father Henry Kowalskick. He also another documentary on YouTube that the brothers made.
Wow.
It's called I Am Fire, and he's also been having an important role in the vocation a lot of priests and seminarians, and as kind of renewing a kind of people watching this documentary will experience receiving a grace of being renewed in their priesthood because he was like an exemplar priest. And so like Father Henry, Sister Claire, they're fruits of sanctity. And for me, those were like concrete proofs of like, this is a work of God.
Wow.
But not just that, I remember before entering the community, I just started seeing like these prodigies of like talents and grace.
Yeah.
Like for example, like we have sisters that, they actually invented their own form of like doing stained glass. They could see in the inside and out that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world.
Wow.
And they developed it for like to produce religious art. And even stoneworking. There was a priest there was a man that I talked to in Barcelona in his 80s. He was an expert in stoneworking. And he said like, all right, I've seen pictures of what the sisters are working on with like their stoneworking, with art. And with my 80 years of experience, there's no way you can explain to me like how they're doing what they're doing without any like experience, with practice, with former knowledge. Because like our community, our mentality is just to launch ourselves into like under obedience, like launch ourselves into what the will of God is.
Wow.
And like we also do a lot of work in the media and like making like movies and YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And this came from like a lot of like these brothers and sisters, they wouldn't have like formal like film experience about the film school.
Yeah.
But but the community was capable of putting a film into theaters without any like formal experience. It was just all like learning on the go, through YouTube and through the grace of God.
Very
so
cool.
like these prodigies and like these fruits of sanctity, for me, this was all like signs that this really is like a work of God, which was one of the reasons that, which was like something that encouraged me to like, to be excited about the community.
Absolutely. What about what would you say to a young person who's much like yourself, who's struggling with the faith or is at that sort of decision point where they have to decide whether they believe the Catholic faith or not? What would you say to them? How would you encourage them?
One of the things I would say is that don't be deceived by people that are not of faith and like people that are non-believers, just to like going off of kind of like catchphrases and like simple notions, because there's a lot of like notions that kind of like floating around in the culture that are just kind of like accepted without really seriously considering them.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times the young people, they kind of be like working with these notions in their minds that are false. Like for example, like faith and reason don't go together, like science and faith, or that like Jesus might not have existed. There's no proof that God exists. Like all of these notions that are like, you just kind of like live with these notions that are false. And I think one thing that I started to discover was that I was blown away by is that the Catholic faith, it has this huge philosophical tradition of 2,000 years of people already wrestling with these problems. That's very like thorough and analytical with all of these like philosophical questions.
Yeah.
And I think like before to coming conclusions, I would encourage them to look in for themselves, like on the side of the Catholic faith, like these questions, like the existence of God, and because it's really like the more like you look into like the intellectual tradition of the church, like the more you're amazed about how deep it is.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm starting. Like I started to realize that when I was in high school, but I'm starting to realize that even more studying at the Santa Croce. Like, wow, this goes way beyond like what there's like people commenting on like YouTube's on like atheistic comments on YouTube. This goes way beyond like what people what a lot of people are like working with,
Yeah.
So I would say there's a lot of reasons to believe, but above all, faith doesn't come from something purely intellectual. It's a gift from God and something that you have to open yourself up to. Because like you think about it, like the Pharisees, like they literally saw Jesus raise someone from the dead and they still didn't believe him. And why is that? Because like even if you have the most amazing evidence before your eyes, it's still an act of the will. You still have to decide.
Yeah.
So like, and I think that act of the will, it's individual, but it's also something that's moved by grace and something that you have to pray.
Yeah.
Like if someone that's kind of like wrestling with the faith, I would say, your fundamental problem, like it's true that you need formation, but you also need to have an interior life.
Yeah.
Like my faith, like it comes from my interior life.
Yeah.
It comes from, and I think that's another thing I think that's so important, especially with evangelization, because like a lot of times with evangelization, a lot of times we can get it like wrapped up in programs and strategies and think about, okay, my diocese is suffering, like how do I turn it around? But I think the core of evangelization is like sanctity, because we have to cooperate with grace. We can't replace it.
Right.
So what does that mean? Like if I'm cooperating with grace, that means I need to be like, have an interior life. I need to be looking for sanctity, because I'm only going to convert someone in the measure that I become a saint.
Right.
Like the saints that converted more people than anyone. And they didn't have like, sometimes they weren't like fully intellectually formed, or they didn't have like, the
Padre Pio, for example.
yeah, he converted more people. And why? Because he was a saint. Because he was opened himself to becoming a channel of the grace for God.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, because like a lot of times we can kind of like, I think there might be a temptation to reduce evangelization to like a strategy. Like there's a book that's very good that's called Making Intentional Disciples, or Forming Intentional Disciples. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I think I have, in the context of like focus and focus missionaries.
It's a very good book. It's very practical. It talks about the 5 thresholds of conversion, which is trust, openness, curiosity, seeking, and intentional discipleship.
Yeah.
It says that like for evangelization, you need to like first gain the trust of a person before you can communicate anything to them.
Absolutely.
And it's very practical, but there's another book that I think that goes even deeper to the core of the question of like how to evangelize.
Yeah.
And that's The Soul of the Apostolate.
Oh yes, I've read that.
Oh really?
Yeah.
That book is that's gold.
It is.
That book is gold, because it's exactly saying what I stated earlier.
Yeah.
Like the evangelization happens when I become a saint.
Yeah.
And that's like the interior life. It's the foundation. The contemplative life is the foundation for the active life.
Yes.
And I think that's so important, because there's a priest in our community. Well, there's a priest. He's no longer with our community. He discerned out. He felt called to the diocesan priesthood. And when he joined the seminary, he started to discover, he felt like the weird one, because he was the only one that was doing a holy hour. Like all the other seminarians, like I don't know what type of like interior life they had, but he felt like he was the only one doing a holy hour. He felt like he was the only one that was kind of like looking for sanctity, boosting an interior life. And I was thinking, like, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? Like, if we're not forming our priests and seminarians in an interior life, like, there's no way the problems are going to turn around, because it's Christ that converts.
Yeah.
Like, Christ is the one that does the work. It's not us. We have to be like channels, and we have to be instruments. But like, that's so important. I think sanctity, that's the fundamental.
Absolutely.
That has to be fundamental, and not just like every priest and seminarian, but also everyone that's working for evangelization.
Every lay person.
And also like the Catholic families as well. Because like I'm not going to be able to convert my kids. If I want my kids to convert, like I have to be a saint.
Yeah.
It's like I have to pray. I have to have an interior life.
Absolutely.
You know? And so a lot of times people can think like, oh, that's devotional, like the rosary, like daily mass, like holy hour. That's all like devotional. But it's not to understand like what our vocation is as Christians. And Christ said that, like, I'm the vine, you are the branches. Like, he that remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit. Because without me, you can do nothing.
Right.
So, like, we can't just dismiss, like, the contemplative life, or that our own interior conversion.
Right.
And in this concrete way.
That's amazing. This has been a great conversation, Brother Stephen. Thank you so much.
Anyway, it's great to be
for
here.
taking the time,
Yeah.
and prayers for your home of the mother, and also for your own personal vocation.
Yeah, thanks, David. I pray for you as well.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Appreciate it.
Anyway, God bless.
Thank you.